أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، والصلاة والسلام على سيد المرسلين سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
وعليكم السلام.
Let us start with the recitation of Al-Kitab, Surah Al-Fatiha. Thank you very much, all of you, for joining. I would like to warmly welcome all of you to a new session of the Islamization of Intellectual Discourse at KICT. Today we are honored to have with us a distinguished guest, Dr. Fatmir, who will be sharing his insight on a very meaningful topic entitled Integration of Islamic Virtues in the Academic Professions. In this session, Dr. Fatmir will guide us on how to integrate the Islamic virtues such as Ikhlas, Amana, Adl, Taqwa, Ihsan, and Itqan in the academic professions, emphasizing the need to enhance teaching approach, research conduct, publications, and social relation in the light of At-Tawheed and its worldview. Before we begin, allow me to briefly introduce our speaker, Dr. Fatmir, an Albanian scholar. He is an associate professor at the Department of Usul and Comparative Religion and Philosophy, Abdul Hamid Abu Sulaiman Kulliya of Islamic Revealed Knowledge and Human Sciences, International Islamic University, Malaysia. Since 2021, he has been an instructor at the Institute of Integrated Knowledge for the online postgraduate program. His bachelor and master were in academic language, in Arabic linguistic, and his PhD was in Usul and Comparative Religion at IIUM as well. Dr. Fatmir served as a Deputy Director at the International Institute for Muslim Unity, IMO, from 2021 to 2023, and as the head of department, the Department of Usuluddin and Comparative Religions from 2017 academic year. He has vast teaching and supervising experience for more than 18 years at the undergraduate, diploma, as well as postgraduate levels. His research interests are on Islam and others, Quranic and Sunnah studies, interreligion dialogue, Muslim and Western scholarships in comparative religion, comparative ethics, world religion, theology, ethnics, and minority studies, culture studies, and peace and tolerance studies. Dr. Fatmir has presented at many international and local conferences, seminars, forum, and webinar. He has author and co-author of more than 44 articles, and author and editor of 6 books, and author of 11 book chapters. And now, without further ado, let us welcome Dr. Fatmir to begin his presentation. Thank you very much.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين ومن تبعه بإحسان إلى يوم الدين. ربي اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. Thank you very much, Prof. Akram, for inviting me to this. to be thankful to all the members of the KICT for giving me this honor to share my experience related to the intellectual discourse concerning the Islamization process, focusing on integration Islamic virtues in the academic profession. And Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh to all of you. Praise be to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for us to be here together today and looking at this topic as it is very important and timely related to our profession as academicians. So I believe that this will be significant to all of us. And I would like to say that it's not just only me that will be talking, because I'm just sharing based on my knowledge and my experience as an academician, International Islamic University, Malaysia. And I would like to get your inputs as well and your contribution when you look at how to integrate the Islamic virtues. Yes, when you look at here, I just prepared some slides to guide you. Before we look at the application aspect, I would like to provide a brief information about some of these concepts that I have mentioned here. And I see that very important, because when you look at integration, before we apply it, we have to understand what is the meaning of this integration, as well as what are these Islamic virtues. And when you look at the academic profession related to the aspect that I have shared here, like teaching, it is our, if I say, main job or trust as academicians, and how and beside teaching, in order to have a professional way of delivering the knowledge that we have and sharing it with the students, we have to enrich our knowledge. That's why we have to embark on research related to our specialization. And further, in order to reach a bigger audience, I believe that publication, it is very going to share our knowledge and provide information to others as well. And another important aspect that we are very concerned, it is the social relationships related to our relationship with students. When I look at students, here usually we look at the concept of being high, I mean more than just a teacher. From our perspective, I want to talk about the Murabi concept, because that is how we look at how to have this close relationship with our students and with our colleagues, with our management team that we have in our Kuri, as well as with others with whom we are going to be in contact, or are we in contact. And all of this, as we understand, it is done in the light of the concept of Tawhid. Tawhid, all of you are aware that it means the oneness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If you are going to make it in Arabic language, it means al-ma'rifah, when we are going to acknowledge the term itself, whereas Tawhid, it is when we are going to unite certain elements, like Tawhid epistemology or Tawhid of al-ma'rifah. So that is related to the subject that we deal with it. But here our concern, it is about the concept at Tawhid, even though in the Quran it is not mentioned as such, but Muslim scholars, they have talked about it and they related this to the oneness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So that is how here we want to do everything in relationship with the concept of taqwa, because in order to have Tawhid, we need taqwa. So let me just, this is very important when I look at how to integrate the Islamic virtues in the academic profession. So these are certain steps that I believe will be very useful to know the meaning of Islamic virtues, to know the integration process from this perspective of Islam, and to know how to integrate the Islamic virtues in teaching approach, research conduct, publication, social relationships. About the first two aspects, and the last one is based on the examples that I'll show you based on my experience. Now, when look at these are what I have identified. There are many, is not just related to 7. There are many Islamic virtues when you look at the Quran, as well as the Hadith of Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But I picked some of them are related, and we are talking about this every time in our academic profession, as well as in different occasions related to the way how we disseminate knowledge. And these are the main concepts, so I'm not going to read the concept because I have selected some of them. And here, when you look at the first concept, that is ikhlas. Maybe when you look at the Muslim scholars, they give us different definition about the concept of ikhlas. So usually we refer to Arabic dictionaries or Arabic books. And I picked and I found that this is very useful definition that will give us the right, if I say, understanding related to our profession and link it. And of course, we know in the Quran that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has revealed one complete surah, even though it is short, but it is very comprehensive, that denotes the oneness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So as it is mentioned here, Prof. Akram, do I have to read the Arabic or just give the meaning?
It's up to you, Prof. I think the meaning should be enough.
Okay. That is how I thought, because based on the context. So as it is mentioned here, al-ikhlas, that is sincerity, it is the realization of a tawhid, oneness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that a person's intention is purely for Allah, directed solely towards Him. It also requires avoiding sins and bid'ah. Now, bid'ah, I put this religious innovation because that is related to the way how we understand things from the Islamic perspective, how to not to fall under this category. Even though when you look at Muslim scholars, they divide bid'ah into two categories, bid'ah hasana and sayyah, the one that is going against the teachings of Islam and the one that is in line with the teachings of Islam. And however, if a person falls into sins or innovations, then he has not perfected his tawhid, because sins and innovation diminish the completeness of tawhid. Here, when you look at this, the first definition, al-ikhlas is connected to our relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is how we understand, because in order to have that the level of ikhlas, we have to acknowledge the fact that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the only being that deserves appreciated and worship. And how can we relate this to our profession when you're going to I believe this is a kind of reminder that we the highest, as I mentioned, khilas should be how we can remind ourselves to get rid of what is considered by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as forbidden, and what is acknowledged by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as al-ma'ruf, or that we have to follow. And the second one, because even here we talk about the intention. In everything, when you look at if you look at the way how transformation will take place, according to Islamic perspective, transformation will take when we start to do the intention. If we have a volition to do something, then intention will direct our volition, and later on we have the thoughts and the action and the application. So if we have the intention to do it for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because we want to maintain a good relationship with Allah, then everything will be done in line with that. The second is related to the purification of one's deeds with a righteous intention. You see how the intention is helping us to purify our deeds, because before we should have the intention from all things that are not accepted by Allah as such. And the most important thing here, and we know that there is a saying of Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam that is, what worried him too much about his ummah was a shirk, and not only just a shirk, but shirk al-asghar. So shirk al-akbar, that is how people associate with Allah. But shirk al-asghar, when we associate with Allah without realizing it, so that is very dangerous for us as believers. So here this is related to ikhlas. I hope you understand then how we are going to connect later on. And I picked the amana because I see that is related to our profession as well. I'm not saying that other are not related, but this will take a lot of time to go into details. I just picked some of them to relate to the profession. And as it is mentioned here, al-amana, it is very, very wide. When you look at the concept of amana, it is very broad because it includes not just only a person that is trustworthy, but is related to responsibility, sincerity, honesty, as well as to be a trustworthy person. So usually, many scholars they define amana looking at these four main concepts that on which amana is understood. But here, that is a very important thing when I refer to this definition. How amana it is very comprehensive, like it encompasses the entire deen, comprehensive way of life. And here, when we talk about from our perspective, Quranic perspective, it is not just only a mere religion like others believe that they have a religion, but it is a given comprehensive way of life by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to humanity. And this is attached to Islam, because here din, when you see the Arabic word that is used by Muslim scholars referring to verses pertaining to the meaning of Islam as a comprehensive way of life, that is related or considered as a din, because others are considered as din even when you look at the Arabic term. But this din kullu, it means compare the entire din, that is, and the foundation of a din is iman. Now, when you look at Islam as a way of life or comprehensive way of life that is given to us by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and we can say in every religion there is an element that is linking them with the unseen, and that is iman. And from our perspective, iman is one part of Islam way of life, looking at the arkanul iman as well as arkanul Islam and other concepts. But here, usually iman, it is translated as faith. When you look at some scholars, they use the word, and I believe that conviction, it is very powerful. Al-iqtina. In Arabic, the word al-iqtina, when a person convinced that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is his creator. So that will help him to understand who is he and standing in front of the purpose of the creation. And it is this element in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that motivates a person to perform righteous deeds. Now, I believe that you are going to follow this definition because they are related to the application, how we integrate in our profession as academic, and how we are going to perform these righteous deeds. And the second one, it is the knowledge. In Arabic, the word ma'rifah is used. Ma'rifah is higher than a mere knowledge, because ma'rifah is the way how his creator. So that's why it is higher than the simple understanding of the concept of ilm. It is knowledge and a tawhid. So these two as elements are mentioned here. It is al-ma'rifah and tawhid, oneness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And every human heart is by nature prepared and capable of bearing this amana, the trust. It means according to the fitrah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created us, whether we like it or not, we are able to bear this trust because we accept it. When you look at this ayah, when you look at the ayah, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, Inna aradna al-amanata ala samawati wal-ardi wal-jibali فأبين أن يحملنها وأشفقن منها وحملها الإنسان إنه كان ظلوما جهولا. Now, the focus, it is related to the trust, and we know what is the whole concept of amana, because this trust, it is in line with the creation, the way Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, how He created us for this purpose. It is not like the term here at the end, ظلوما جهولا. It does not mean that man was not created for that purpose. But usually in our daily context, when we look at in our human life, many times we accept things without realizing the responsibility. When we accept is a great responsibility, but many of us, they don't realize that. So this is how many scholars, when they look at this ظلوما جهولا, and it does not mean that man is not able to uphold this amana. And we are not going to discuss the meaning, of this ayah, but the most important thing is related to the amana that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has embedded in us from the moment that He created. So we look at it from the concept of fitra, and everyone, it is capable to respond to what Allah has given to him. And another concept that is adl, usually uh, justice, it means to place things in their rightful places. So that is the general definition of many people, or if you refer to works even written by non-Muslims. So usually that is the adl. But when we, maybe we can say justice, because adl from Islamic perspective has a broader meaning. It's not just only the term justice that is focused on one particular aspect. So when we look at this, the second that it is mentioned when I refer to some of the works in Arabic, and they say the fairest form of adl is at tawhid. Now, as we mentioned, we have different aspects of justice: justice towards ourselves, justice towards the family, justice towards our maybe profession, justice toward the community, justice toward the leadership that we have, and the highest one is justice that is a great responsibility towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's why here it is mentioned placing worship in its proper place. That is the right understanding of al adl from the Islamic perspective in relationship with the oneness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Likewise, the greatest form of injustice that is mentioned here is this shirk. So how we differentiate between justice concerning our relationship with Allah and justice and injustice concerning our relationship with Allah. Therefore, we have the guideline that is revealed to us by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that is Quran, and the application through the prophetic sunnah of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So that is how we can say that everything is done according to that. And when we refer to this ayah of the Quran, indeed shirk is a great injustice. The dhulmun azim. Inna shirk la dhulmun azim. So that is how injustice, when we do towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that shows that we don't appreciate what He has given to us. So that is, and I think this is another term that I want you to, maybe other terms you can refer to, because ihsan, it is another great component that we have to understand. And usually what is meant by ihsan, it is how we do things in a very beautiful manner. But of course, as being Muslims, we have to understand how, what is this beautiful manner. And this is related to ethics. It is related to the application. It is like we usually refer to the Hadith Jibreel alayhi when we want to understand the concept of ihsan related to Islam as a way of life. As it is mentioned here, Ubudullah kanaka tarahu, fa in lam takun tarahu fa innahu yarak. That's why ihsan means to worship Allah as if you see Him, or if you don't see Him, He is seeing you. So it means all these terms that I have shared with you, or if we talk about Islamic virtues, these are terms that are making us to excel in our actions. And of course, Islam does not separate between commandments and the application. They are given to us by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as a set of values. So we don't have to look at like the rules and regulations that are mentioned in the Quran, or commandments are separated from the actions or the application. So all these are coming together as a set of values. As well as here I mentioned, it also denotes worshiping Allah in the manner He likes, not in the way we want to worship Allah. And if we refer to some context, like looking at Malaysia, we have a multi-religious society, and we have different people. They believe that they have the truth, but how they relate themselves to the truth that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has revealed to humanity through the final message. And even when we refer to what they have, so that is the way how they understand. So how we are going to justify when we look at them based on the application. It'll be very difficult to know that this person is a Muslim or a Hindu or a Buddhist or a Christian or an atheist without the application. That's why for us as Muslims, we have the highest level of worshiping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala the way He likes it, not the way we want. And when you look at the others, even though they say that that is how God has commanded them, but if we look at it from Islamic perspective, then we are able to understand that this is not the way how Allah wants people to worship Him. And here, worship is not just only related to a particular aspect. Like worship and ibadah, it is very comprehensive. Like if we apply to our profession, it comprehends everything that we do. And of course, as you can see here, it requires a complete ikhlas. Now, if we combine these terms together, and of course, we need taqwa in order to excel. We need taqwa in order to excel. And taqwa, as we all of us understand, it is related to the way how we bring into our, if we say, the niyyah, intention, as well as the views or thoughts, and the expression and the actions, the awareness about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this can be related to this, because here, ihsan cannot be achieved without taqwa. Wa'budullaha kanaka taru, that is taqwa, you know. So without taqwa, we cannot achieve ihsan. So this is what I can say about these concepts. Now, when I refer to Ismail Rajab Faruqi, here, yes, if we look at how we integrate, even today, some of the scholars, they don't differentiate between integration and Islamization. When you look at integration, maybe you have heard or you have studied other civilizations. And even I believe that integration, in its right meaning, it is a tool that is used to help us to achieve the process of Islamization as a whole. This is how, when I look at it from that perspective, it means that this integration, it will help us to read from two perspectives. So we are not just only reading from the Islamic perspective, like being an academician in our university, you are an expert in your field, teaching maybe in engineering, information technology, mechatronics, or hardware, software, whatever it is, or mathematics. Now, how we are going to integrate into this aspect the Islamic values. So we should have knowledge about Islam. At the same time, we should have knowledge the subject that we are teaching. Otherwise, this will not, will not help us to understand things the way they should be, because there will be a contradiction. In order to avoid that contradiction, then you have to be well prepared and well versed in the knowledge that is related to our time. We believe that the dominating civilization that is today, it is the Western civilization, related to different disciplines and how they promoted this way of understanding throughout the world through different means. And technology is one of them, and this is how we are using. So how are we going to evaluate the process? So integration, while you are reading from two aspects, and being Muslims, our identity as Muslims will help us to evaluate the whole process. Even though, as I mentioned, some of them, if you refer to Prof. Malkawi, for example, he wrote a book on integration, and his understanding about integration is not different from Islamization. But if you look at integration as a concept between two systems, like Faruqi said, that is how, according to him, the Islamization process will not be achieved unless there is this integration, to integrate between two systems related to our contemporary time. Like he said, dichotomy between the traditional and the modern. Maybe we don't talk from the Western perspective. They look at traditional knowledge that Muslim scholars present and modern related to our time. And we Muslims believe that there is a continuity of knowledge. It does not stop. We don't go according to these stages that the West looked at the knowledge per se. And he said that this desired integration is the task specifically of academicians well versed in the modern discipline. So there is a problem with the connection as well. Huh? Is it okay? I don't know why I lost and came in again. No, okay. Now, what we are talking about here, according to what Faruqi, that the one that I mentioned, so we need to have well-informed the knowledge that we are, in our case, as academicians with students, from the Islamic perspective, as well as the discipline that you are in order to create this and to help the young generation to develop their personality and how to respond to the contemporary developments. And here we can provide the Islamic perspective. Then you can see here, because that is related to education, you might be aware of it. And the purpose of integration is to provide via education accurate ilm, that is knowledge, that is facets of life, like intellectual, material, and metaphysical. So metaphysical here, we talk about from our perspective, not from the philosophical perspective. Philosophers, they have a different metaphysics, but that is related intellectual material related to our seen aspect of life, and the metaphysical related to the unseen. This is how, when you look at of education, in order to make it different from other perspectives, you might have the Western perspective related to your specialization, is intended to produce a God consciousness and righteous individual who lives in accordance with the divine mandate stipulated by the lawgiver, that is Allah Ash-Shara'i, here that is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So in other words, what we are trying to that integrate, it is governed by the guideline that is given to us by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala by referring to Quran and the Sunnah, as well as the scholars, and we are related to that as well. And here further must be directed at the balanced growth of the human personality, as well as outer aspects, including physical, emotional, intellectual, imaginative. So how we are going to get rid of this from the Western perspective, that they use the assumption approach, because from our perspective, we don't have that assumption approach. So that should be governed by the Islamic worldview when we are going to do, or I say, to integrate these values. Oriented approach, I look at it, divine oriented approach here, it means from our perspective as Muslims. You might see that even related to other religious communities, they might have that, because divine is something that is outside this world, how we connect ourselves with the unseen. And cultivating, here it is, the perspective means cultivating of the mind, intellectual and spiritual. And here how the objectives of academic profession from the perspective of Islam should facilitate the acquisition of knowledge and virtues. Let's say if we ask ourselves, in order to apply this to ourselves as academicians, so how do we facilitate this kind of knowledge? If I can say, how do we disseminate the right way of knowledge to provide for our students a learning environment that is not contradictory to the Islamic worldview? Because the integration process is not like we are looking at the other perspective. There should be an approach that I can say is a continuous approach. It is not separated. Integration, we do it spontaneously, because some of us might have integration, like I give the first perspective, then the second perspective. That is one way of understanding. Then the second part should be a comparative analysis. Maybe we can say how we create these competencies in our students in order to have a system or the about the integration, how they can apply. Because beside giving them knowledge, we have to give them skills. And these skills, when I mention here virtues, these are related to the Islamic virtues, because knowledge cannot be, if we can say, knowledge is acquired and skills are in the person of, or the personality of a student, as well as in our personalities as academicians. unless we are guided, then we can achieve before the interconnection between us and the surrounding, as well as our connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, by looking at Islamic virtues and develop all aspects of an individual's personality, as well as motivate learners to promote what is virtue and forbid what is vice. This approach, al-ma'ruf wa nahi anil munkar. So al-ma'ruf, all these virtues that I have just mentioned here, and there are many of them in the Quran. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has types that is related to the righteous virtues, and we have, because these are related to morals. When I look at al-akhlaq in general, or if we can say al-bir, what is al-fadail in Arabic, that is translated as virtues, is higher than just simple ethics that is related to application. So we have both aspects, like al-khair wa shar, what is a good thing and what is vice or bad thing. And foster the development of God consciousness. Individuals, when look at our way, we academicians, how we develop this understanding that before we provide the knowledge to our students, how we are going to have this God consciousness in our even some they translate like fear. Now, what will make us to be afraid of? The way I am is related to the consequences that will come after that. It's not that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't love us when look at the reality, because He is the one who created us and giving us what we do. So go against the commandments of Allah, we fear that how we are going to face Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on the day of Quran. When you look at it, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, ittaqu yawman turja'una ila rabbikum. Ittaqu yawman turja'una ila rabbikum. So that is now the consequences. We are going to turn to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In another verse that we can say, وَإِلَيْهِ الْمُنْتَهَى, everything comes back to Allah. So how we are going to instill this perception requires the integration, how we are going to respond to the contemporary dominating civilization, and our academician and the learning community, and we are learned community, are facing this reality. So how we are going to create this or to facilitate, if I can say, in order to respond in a proper way. We are not saying that we reject everything that is given to us by others, but we have to look at it from the perspective that we have. That's why, hence, people understanding about the Islamic truth concerning the well-being of individuals, families, societies, and humanity at large. So that has a very general, broad approach when you look at the Islamic perspective. So I hope this will make sense, inshallah. I'm just trying to share with you what I understand. And here, in order to integrate the approach to knowledge from Islamic perspective, I mentioned it requires evaluation from the perspective of Islamic sources, as well as here, when we talk about Islamic sources, we have to verify, because these are thawabit, are not changed. Al-Quran and Sunnah, these are not changed. From the time that the time of Prophet ﷺ until today, we see the same text of the Quran, and we see the same sayings of prophets that are acknowledged highest, or if we can say the authoritative sayings of prophets by the Sahaba and the scholars later on. And that is attached, if we can say, the Turath and Islamic, that is the contribution scholars from different times. Here, based on my understanding, I said that how to show the integrated approach is developed by reading from both perspectives. Like we have the Islamic scientific perspective. What we're going to do, if we apply this in teaching, for example, if we apply this in teaching, maybe in teaching, so we have to prepare ourselves. Usually, some of us, they think that teaching is easy responsibility. And even today, we can say that some of us, they have been assigned to teach some subjects and they're not well prepared, So in order to achieve the aim of teaching as academicians, so we have to prepare before we go and give or share our knowledge with our students. We have to bear in mind that our students ask questions that we fit. So how we are going to respond if we are not able to understand the subject that we are dealing with? And we have seen that some of the academicians, they just read based on the experience that even students, some of them, they just read the slides without being able to interpret. Maybe it could be that if we have some courses that are shared with others, and if I start like academician in this university, and there is no time given to me to prepare myself, then I borrow the slides and just read. So that is how it can be, experience. And I remember my professor, when I was doing my PhD, I just shared with you that he was telling me, he said that is very strange because even though he had 40 years of teaching, and he said, even though you give me a subject to teach now, if I have not taught it before, so that requires up to 6 months to prepare ourselves. And he said, when he talked about this integrity, the question here related to ethics, how we are going to have this integrity, because that is related to how we are going to show this responsibility. Maybe here in this world we just get rid of it, but being Muslims, if we go back to the definition, show this ikhlas to our relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So that is how we have to look at it in order to understand this integrity in the teaching approach. Then we have to read from both perspectives. I can say that maybe in our field in Usuluddin, when we are relating this to issues, because we talk about relevant, maybe it requires Islamization, because an integration. Because here we are trying to make them believe that what we teach, because this is related to the foundations of Islam as a way of life, and we want them to understand that all these are relevant to different times. So we cannot say that it was relevant to that time and is not to our time. So we expect that even in your field, you should have the right understanding about the Islamic approach, if I can say the Islamic worldview, dealing with concepts, and the Islamic ethos that is related to the social orientation, and Islamic ethics when we talk about the way how we apply. Because it is, if we look at three aspects and related to other aspects of life. If you look at Islam as a way of life, it's very comprehensive. So I just give you an example. Even when if you want to apply to research, for example, as academicians in university, to be fair, we don't have time that is located for that aspect. We have a workload like anyone else, because I look at my experience, and research, it is a burden for us because it is something that we do, others do not do, others do not do. Thus we get the same privilege in our university, but of course that will help us to, when I look at research, to build our personality as individuals and to have more than others. So I see, even though there is a challenge, but at the same time, I believe this is an opportunity for us to make use of it in a proper way. Instead of maybe blaming somebody, but I want you that we have to be fair with the system of education that we have, that everyone should be treated equally, like how we treat our students, how we treat our colleagues, how we treat others. Then this is how it should be, so even some of them, maybe you can say that how we can make use of our students to help us to develop, because here I'm not maybe when we do research, maybe if we make use of students, it's not that we abuse the abilities and ideas that they provide for, but I believe this is helping us to train them and to build the personality. So we look at it from that perspective. It's not like we make use of them. I it from that perspective, we talk about Islamic, how to develop that. This is the second, an integrated approach, like knowing deeply Islamic perspective as well as the use of technology and other related domains. Now, you are masters field in technology. We have basic knowledge when we talk about the contemporary situation of information. Important thing is you have to provide a system that will help us to monitor in order to identify what is accepted by Islam and what is rejected by Islam, what is praiseworthy and what is from that perspective. And if you have created that system to monitor the activities, maybe when I enter into this system, then I will not be able to see what is not accepted by Islam. But when you look at the religion, we are going to establish a personality that can stand by itself without creating this system to help them. This is how we should develop this personality among ourselves and students. Because when you open this technology, you see everything there. So what will make us to avoid something that others promoting and to that phenomenon or that situation? That's why we have to to produce experts in the field that should know how to integrate this. Like in your field, every academician should know how to integrate this, because I maybe based on I have heard from some being in this profession, and when I talk about the integration in the perspective of Islam, and this is how we complete the process of Islamization. And some of them responded that looking at their situation for teaching, maybe up to 40 years, they thought that according to the moment that they realized that they were doing something wrong, because they were not able to look at it from the Islamic perspective. It is like if I teach psychology, for example, or engineering or mathematics or whatever it is, and I look at it from one perspective, the way it is expressed by the author in the book that I refer to. Now, when I'm translating this teaching in front of my student, then I mentioned previously we have to use the comparative approach. So that will help us. It is like when we look at it from that perspective, then we have to make our students understand, as we understand ourselves, what is the indicator that we have to the knowledge that is given to us by the outsiders. So that is, everyone should have this ability. Otherwise, it will be very difficult. We are promoting the knowledge given to us by others, and we are not producing a generation that is going to follow the methodology and of Muslim scholars. So here we can say that maybe when you want to do research, we have to revisit the contribution of Muslim scholars, and I believe that many of you are doing that. I heard that at the beginning of they tried to produce Islam by asking the students to read some verses from the Quran and to reflect on it, as well as to read some of the sayings of prophets. That is the Bible. I think this is very important. So if you do that, then you are creating a bridge between the knowledge that you give to them and to maintain the identity. So this is when we the way how our students are equipped with the right understanding of knowledge. So I hope that this is very clear. And you see another thing, aspects of an individual's personality, motivate learners to promote what is a virtue and foster of God-conscious individuals, enhance people's understanding of Islamic truth concerning the well-being of individuals, families, societies, and humanity at large. And the last one, look at is produce intellectuals with the ability to respond to challenges posed by technology concerning religious practices. So here, why I use the term here, religious practices, and to provide sound solutions in this subject, because Islam is not focusing only what is related as rituals. So rituals are helping us to represent the way of life that we have, and that will help others, because the practice can be used as a key indicator for others to to acknowledge the fact that who we are as a community. Like we have a Muslim community. One of professor was telling me that he was praying with his family in a garden, and those passers-by, they thought that physical exercise, they did not know that he's a Muslim. So when they approached him and asked him, what kind of exercise is this? Is it beneficial? How can we make use of it? So this is the outer aspect of life that others can identify as. Now, and he was to them that we are Muslims, and this is the part of following Islam as a way of life, and how we are going to represent what we have as Muslims through a ritual. When you look at Salah, it is a ritual, and it is a part of the whole. But this is a basic. And when we offer the Salah, it is not just only the physical aspect; it is a whole process, and it requires a lot of efforts to be made by us. It's not just only to offer the Salah as it should be, but we have to understand why we should offer this Salah. And this is what maybe they can ask questions, then we can. So this is what I can give it, because I wanted to relate this directly without looking at these concepts one by one.
Jazakumullah khair. Thank you very much, Prof, for this excellent presentation. Actually, we have a few questions in the chat. Most of them are from our professors here in the College of ICT. So let me try one by one. Okay. The first one actually from Prof. Rosalinda. She's writing interesting approach in comparing the integration and Islamization in knowledge management, understanding multiple perspectives in critical, which include understanding assumption. And we have also Prof. Rosalinda. Question: how to develop ethics in our audience as we share our knowledge? At times, we may rely on technology to do so. You want to answer, Prof? Or,
maybe maybe let me answer this. The first one, it is a comment, Prof. Akram. That is how I look at it.
Yes.
Okay. And the second one, we'll look at it is related to technology, how we make use of it at the same time. How we make use of it at the same time. Now, of course, or you are the experts of that field. You know it very well. When you look at technology, you belong to that expertise. And maybe some of us find difficult how maybe we think that, okay, technology, it is the way it should be, and we are going to accept the way it. And I believe this is the wrong approach that some of the academicians make use of it. So being a Muslim, we have a different guideline. So when you look at technology that is given to us by others, unless we have our own sample of technology, many programs that are, then this will solve the problem. But if we don't have, then I believe that our being as Muslims, our identity will help us. Because when we operate any kind of dealing with, in this case, maybe information technology, how the source that we provide for students to get knowledge, different systems that are here, I believe that our identity will help us to monitor it easily. It is like how we are going to identify whether this source, it is a identity or not. Muslim identity, then what is the difference between me as a Muslim and the one who has produced that program in information, or let's say technology? Quite a lot. If I may say that, you have to understand your role as being a Muslim and why you are a Muslim, why you are different from others, what will make you better than others. what kind of information you should provide to different others, and how to information that you get from others. So this is the whole process, as I mentioned. Maybe some of us, they say that, okay, integration, they look at very difficult process. And here, when we look at evaluation, that is, we arrived at the highest stage, that is Islamization. Now we can say even some of them, they look at the Islamization difficult to digest. But when you look at the reality, we are doing that without realizing. So I think that the only thing that we might need, how to create this awareness. I believe that through this series of talks that Prof. Akram and doing in your Kulia, how to introduce to create this awareness about Islamization, I believe this will help you. This will help you very much, as it is helping me, because we have to work together. Like we invited recently Prof. Akram talking about the artificial intelligence, how to relate this with Islamic. So we have to work together. That alone we can solve the problem. I hope this is clear, Prof. Whether I answered the question properly or not.
Thank you, Prof. Another question, also by Prof. Rosalinda. How to develop ethics in our audience? As we share our knowledge, at times we may rely on technology to do so.
This is a very important question when I talk about responsibility, because ethics is responsibility. Integrate this concept that I mentioned here, sincerity. Al-Ikhlas, that is the highest level that we show this in our relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So how can we make the audience, like in our case, we have the students, we have the readers, they might be students and anyone else, a Muslim or a non-Muslim. When you look at the research, the publication, and social relationship that we have with people. Now, when you look at it, instead of providing for them, it is better to understand what is wrong. It is like we use in our university the Turnitin system, Turnitin application to the plagiarism. So now, if we teach our students that this is wrong, and they will not be able to plagiarize, instead using this system, and the system we can manipulate. The system that we create, we can manipulate. Like we can say, maybe this can be used as a supportive system. We have a guideline telling the student that, okay, this is wrong for you, and this is right, and this is wrong. So to be somebody with potential, then go through these changes, because it's very difficult how to instill the right understanding from Islamic perspective, even when you're dealing with Muslims who have been grown up in a Muslim family 20 years. Among our colleagues, we see that, especially when it comes to interest, this is for us. When look at it, how we are going to get rid of it. That's why I say God consciousness is very important. And even when our students are to continuously offer the prayers, because we have something else like what I have seen during the time of prayer, our students, they are having classes. So how can we get rid of this kind of system that we have even in our university in order to create this awareness? I believe that Salat will help very much to even though looking at akhlaq, it is very wide, but how to make them be mindful in dealing with the information that they get from this, and how they are going to justify it. Because if we have the teacher that is using the sources and he doesn't bother, then the same thing. But if we have a teacher mindful about what he's giving, instead of relying on sources that are not related to what we should give to the students, and we find it very easy to collect so the students will do this. So I hope that a lot
Thank
of
you, Prof.
patience.
Thank you, Prof. We have one professor Major one raising his hand, and after that we come back to the chat box. So maybe we can listen to
Yes, I think.
Prof question. Okay, Prof, you go ahead to ask.
Yeah, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi. Thank you, Prof. Fatmir and Prof. Just want to ask regarding on the what do you call this the integration and Islamization of knowledge. Do we need to have in terms of the knowledge to integrate all this the other knowledge, maybe in terms of the what do you call this integration knowledge? Once we integrate, do we need to have deep of the knowledge itself? That's all my question. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. According to what I understand, Prof, it is based on your ability. But to become an expert in the field, being an academic, time in our university, I look at myself, I found it very difficult because at the beginning we faced many challenges. When we have more we experience, we have more, if I can say, deeper understanding we have about what we are doing. At the same time, unless a person doesn't want to develop, we have some academicians, they don't, because they take things ready from others and they don't develop when they talk about research, publication. When we ask them, we don't generalize. So depends on the personality of the person. That's how I'm going to get rid of this kind of maybe I can say laziness that we can find among the teachers in our university or other places. So here, as I mentioned before, if we look at from the Western perspective, so when they developed their civilization, they studied all what was there. So they revived the past and they collected from different civilizations and they developed their own civilization. But in our case, it is not like that, bro. Because when you look at integration, we use as a tool, we don't come out with a new knowledge because we have the knowledge. So I'm not saying that we come with a new knowledge because we produce a new knowledge. So what kind of knowledge we produce that is relevant to our time? And that knowledge, it is there. It is justified by the sources. So to what we are trying to do, we're just trying to inform others about what they should do and what we should do as Muslims. It is them. It is what they claim. In the West, they claim. But if I look at it from our perspective, we don't claim anything because we just convey the message that us to do. To change here, our own understanding subjected to change. When you use the integration, maybe we can say the approaches that we use today are different from approaches that were used from our scholars before. And maybe in the context, like in Malaysia, we need to use different approaches in order to do the integration and Islamization. Maybe those who are living, maybe they might use approach, for example, but in their context, it has a different connotation and application. Whereas in Malaysia, we have a Muslim country, we have the Muslim leadership, like in our university. So what would be the approach here? So this is, I see this should be contextualized that we can understand it in order to confusion that might be created there. So this, and above all, Prof, when you look at integration, as I mentioned before, even though we have scholars today, because of maybe Islamization is not as concept to be used in the West, based on my experience, they look at Islamization as a confused concept. If they say irrelevant, okay, we accept, it's not relevant. So they is not confused. I don't believe that this is confused. But I can say is not your context, but it to my context. It is not relevant the way we do it in our context. Also used as a tool, but for them they provided and established their own civilization that they call it as the Western civilization, which it is borrowed from different civilizations. I hope this is clear, Prof. Huh? This
Shukran,
requires
shukran.
by itself.
Thank you very much.
Welcome.
Prof, we have some more questions in the chat. How to mitigate real reliance on technology in our teaching and learning and knowledge sharing to ensure ethics is incorporated?
I think that we have ethics. We have work ethics. In every institution, we have this work ethics. And looking at our university being an Islamic university, for us, ethics is just not only bind to a system of body that we are dealing with, like a physical aspect of the institute itself, but it goes beyond that. For us, we talk about, we look at that is the sin. So how we are going to, as Muslims, how we are going to integrate between these two accepts when it comes to the application, because using as
Dr. Fatmir?
My suggestion, I think, is off the video. I think this let's use this what do you call this?
Prof,
Yeah.
Prof. Fatmir, you may close the video.
Or maybe you can hotspot using handphone because our Wi-Fi is so weak.
Yeah, agree. I will try to communicate with him. And actually, I can see that the questions are very important, and we need actually this kind of session to be raised and again, especially nowadays with advanced technology, with AI system. We are so worried about integrating technology in the teaching and learning. Of course, definitely there are many advantages, and we can see the advantage and benefit every day. But at the same time, there are some issues that need to be discussed among scholars. And nowadays, we can see many of the work and student work, assignment, and projects are generated by AI, as well as papers, published papers. So now the question is about the ensuring the adil and justice in marking student work. So sometimes we also are not sure whether this work has been generated by AI, or maybe we have some uh, indications, but we are not sure. We don't have any proof that this text were produced by AI. So the question now of justice, the question of adil in the marking student work, and we have some indicators that this work were generated by AI. So a lot of questions need to be discussed among the scholars, and that's why this session is important as well as other related sessions. I want to hear from our scholars here. We have many scholars. They may share their insightful. If there is any comment, any point to be discussed while we are waiting for the speakers to come back. So, Prof, you want to to comment?
Okay, all right. So actually, this I'm very so excited once you have this program actually of the integration in Islamization of knowledge. And then at the same time, I'm teaching for the Genie 1000 for the engineering. There's students for postgrad students, even including the undergraduate. I think this the most important, maybe from the IIUM itself, maybe from this different background, terms of the Islamic rival knowledge, KICT, in terms of the maybe I think there's more focus on the curriculum development. So once we have the curriculum development in terms of the integration, Islamization, some our student maybe not really this deep in terms of the maybe is like maybe what they call the knowledge, maybe in terms Islamic knowledge, because we have a different background. Sometimes they are very deep, sometimes they are very loose. That's why maybe if you want to integrate this knowledge, maybe you have some basic. That one is a basic of knowledge. As you mentioned, influence of the AI right now, maybe I think can bring somewhere else is not the truth path. So this why maybe last time how we can maybe some of students from the engineering, from the technology, they can have some what basic courses this maybe from Islamic knowledge. Maybe was I have attended last time. I still remember what is given by Tan Sri Almar has given for 2 years, 4 semesters, giving all the lecturers to attend the course. At least they can guide us the Quran, PK, whatever that really is a worldview Islamic knowledge is. That's when now we go deeper, right? So we bring in terms of I'm actually because we have knowledge, maybe small knowledge, into our students, so they can guide them into the right path. So that's why maybe in terms of the last time we have the Prof Khalid and the Prof Zuraida and myself, maybe some others, Prof Ruslan right now, have some developed the maybe like Islamization of knowledge and critical thinking to develop. It is very right, this curriculum. Have a good example for other university. I think just only IIUM. That's why it was in terms of the relate is IIUM mission and vision, because we have this maybe first maybe integration, Islamization, and then comprehensive excellence. So not just only maybe we excellent in terms of the knowledge, engineering or technology, because sometimes we have to integrate. And then we have very good. So as mentioned about the khatib, last khutbah, last khutbah is Inna Allah yaksha. So it's very good. Whatever knowledge that we have, inshallah, we are closer. We are fear to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That is maybe there's a goal, the objective that we have actually. Once you have this very good in terms of the knowledge, if you're not closer or fear to Allah, no point. That's why I think is we lose in terms of the mission and the vision IUM. That's why maybe I need some what they call this our colleague from Akram, from the Shehu, for example, right? And then from Rosalinda, how we can put together this effort for the future, inshallah. So sorry.
Thank you very much, Prof. Thank you. Well done. So, Prof. Rosalinda, you want to say something, please? Unmute yourself.
Okay, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Okay, I think we have established the Center for Technology, Tauhidic Artificial Intelligence Studies to mitigate or to address those concerns by the lecturers in the university. But I think we need this discourse more often. And we need this sort of discourse to, it's everyone's responsibilities, and not just, I think it's important in IIUM to not differentiate Muslims versus non-Muslim, and then to differentiate, any differentiation is not encouraged. Okay, so we want to collaborate and we want to work together. So I have to go back to Prof. Akram's question in terms of comments regarding Turnitin and responsibilities of lecturers, all of that. So we have tried to discuss this with the rector and with the Prof. Faris, the deputy rector for academic. Yeah, we need, it's not just integration of curriculum, but we need convergence of curriculum. Convergence means we transform the curriculum and we not just integrate AI. We not just, that's why I'm very, very sensitive in terms of the discussion on what is integration versus convergence or Islamization, as has been addressed by the speaker. But I think first thing that we need to do is to get everyone to talk about it. So, and everyone, we mean every lecturer, every academic staff, such as, and not just international staff or local staff, not everyone needs to talk about it in terms of our concerns. And I think Turnitin, actually, Prof. Akram has introduced new capabilities such that Turnitin can detect whether the piece was written or not. And there are so many technological tools that has been introduced to mitigate and to develop these sorts of issues. Prof. Fatmir is back with us. I can see that Prof. Fatmir is there. So, but we hope that the discussions, this sort of discussions and discourse, I think it's very important to have this discourse to, and thank you, Jazakallah, Prof. Fatmir, for answering some of my questions. And I try to write down I think there are more questions, but I don't type as fast as I think. So I would love to discuss with Prof. Akram and Prof. Fatmir in terms of what are the things that we need to do in the university to encourage Islamization and not just integration. And I like the word but some people are Islamophobia. Just because the word Islam is there, then they have a phobia against the word. So we try not to use Islam as in the word per se until everyone gets used to it. So we use words like convergence, we use words like Tawhidic integration, but even Tawhidic is seen in a negative light. So we're just playing, for me, those are just labels. The important thing is for us to understand what we need to do, what is our responsibility as a creator of Allah Subhanahu Wa Ta'ala, as an academic staff, especially. We are in the most very, very important position because we shape the way the brains, the way they think, these scholars, the future, and these future scholars are going to be soft powers in the whole world and not just in Malaysia, everywhere. And when we shape it, we have to make sure that we integrate and we inculcate or embed these understandings in them. So thank you, Prof. Akram, again.
Thank you, Prof. Well done, Jazakumullah khair. Welcome back, Prof. Fatmir here. Actually, Prof, we have a limited time, but we have many questions. I forwarded all the questions to your WhatsApp. Hopefully, you can respond to some of them in your free time. But now, final conclusion from your side. We have many questions. Let me go through very fast to all of them, and then I want conclusion from your side. We have here a question from Prof. Rosaline. The creation of such monitoring system is hence responsibility of Muslim researchers and technologists. Another one, Islamization is hence our responsibility as a Muslim scholars or Muslim researchers. The question is, we should be able to collaborate with non-Muslim. I know, Prof. Fatmir, you have some dialogues with non-Muslim as well, since this is your field of interest. So maybe the question is, how? The question is, to be able to collaborate with non-Muslim, how? Another question also from Prof. Rosalinda. Rituals should be understood as why we perform them. And we have one question from Brother Mahdi. In some countries, like for example Israel, students study the Quran and Hadith in a way that separate Islamophobia. How can we use technology to respond to this? Is it acceptable to criticize other religions in academic discourse? Prof. Roslina asked a question. Assalamu alaikum. Thank you for your talk. In my opinion, we can have an honor code to uphold the integration of Islamic virtues in the academic professions. So, Prof, maybe you can respond overall and conclude your talk.
Yeah, Barakallahu Fik, Prof. Akram. What we have discussed here, even in many times we don't have to mention even the word Islam. Because as a Muslim, you are communicating with different communities. The masterpiece that you write, for example, in writing a paper related to a contemporary issue, our way of writing should not contradict the teachings of Islam. That is how we have to present. This is another way how we integrate the Islamic virtues into the writing of a paper that is going to be read by any member of the community, whether even especially in a publication, for example. We want to publish a paper in Index or Scope Journal. They have their own criteria, rules, and now we don't have to compromise. I agree with that. But maybe you can define technology or science or the way you look at it based on your experience, and you put into it the Islamic flavor. And we believe that if they use it intellectually, to the pure of understanding things according to the human nature, I don't see any contradiction from our perspective when I look at the way they address these issues. The only difference will be the one who is addressing these issues. To make the outcome will be very different. We are talking about a Muslim academician, and we talk about an atheist academician, a Christian academician, or a Hindu academician. So the orientation that will be at the end, then we can realize that this will make a difference. But when we look at, in order to make it very clear the subject, then we can use from the Islamic perspective. Because when we look at the terms like, if we talk about family from the perspective of Islam, education from the perspective of Islam, and I believe this will not create any contradiction when we deliver the message to the audience, whether directly or indirectly through the research or writings. I believe that this should be more appreciated, because based on my experience, when I published an article, the journal, even though they were very restricted related to interreligious dialogue, I talk about the concept of fitra. Even the edit, he mentioned to me, if you use the Arabic term the way it is, so we don't see any problem. But not every journal is going to accept that approach, And he told me that, okay, you don't accept the meaning of religion as reflected or denoting deen, but you can give us the explanation. So that is how we can provide to them what they need without any contradiction. So that integration, like what Sister Roslina mentioned, like to embed this, because these are, when we talk about the creation, Allah embedded these abilities in every one of us, whether we like it or not. Even a non-Muslim and atheist, he has these abilities. But now the direction, that is how we come in. As Muslims, we come in to make it easy for them to understand that this is from Allah and this is from whom. So that will help us, how we are going to monitor this, how we're going to monitor this and how to look at it from that perspective. Now, when you look at, yes, others are not like us. We have to have a code of ethics as well as etiquette when you're dealing with members of other communities. Based on my experience, they are very, expert in dealing with non-Muslims, even here in Malaysia. But I've seen some of them, they don't follow the boundaries that are set by the teachings of every religion. So this is, if you are not able to follow the boundaries, not to come forward and represent our community. But today we have a trend that we have scholars, self-claimed academicians, without any bothering, they are going to represent our community. And they will give a bad image about Islam as a way of life. So we have to be very particular and very sincere to deal with the subject. So that is I mentioned. Like for example, I have currently a project dealing with Christians and Buddhists, and we have Muslims. When we look at them, okay, try to maintain. I'm not maintain the etiquette according to Islam, and I believe other religions they have that etiquette. But some Muslims who are related to this, they don't care about this etiquette, like hugging the opposite gender. So is that Islamic? If you are going to meet in a bigger audience as a Muslim or a Muslimah, we have the boundaries that with whom we are going to deal. And when I raised this issue, I said, if we want to accept each other the way we are, then we have to observe the boundaries that are set by each religion. And we'll not be able to create conflicts, but we can solve the problems. So as academicians, if we give this perception to our students that Islam is different from culture, Islam is different from tradition, is different from my identity, is different from other religions, I believe that this will create a mindset by living according to the universality of Islam. When we talk about al-alamin, so it is not only claiming, but we have to make sure that we implement and live according to it. So we have to integrate and develop this mindset in our students, that they have to walk by themselves, and we can monitor them when they are here. We can monitor. So I believe this would be the like, if we, because as I mentioned, in our university we have a manual, and we have to provide a manual. Like in centers, they have this manual. In centers, they have a manual how we do Islamization. And what I see the most important thing in this manual is the related concepts. We have different concepts, and these are the Quranic concepts. Because that is our identity. When we look at us as Muslims, when we do Islamization, use the Quranic concepts and the one that are mentioned by our Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And I believe this requires your knowledge about Arabic language. You see, one is reading today, reading one of the writings saying that to know Arabic language, this will help us to improve our intellect. And we know that Arabic language is the language of the Quran. It's not the language of Arabs. It is the language of the Din. And being an expert in something, at least you know the terms. Maybe you don't know Arabic language very well, but you know the terms, and you can use these terms when you are dealing or delivering a talk to differentiate between our perspectives. Technology, you know better than me. We have many scholars who contributed to this at any stage. Are we going to deny this fact and we praise the 200? I believe this is the wrong approach that we use, and we read. Another problem that I can say, maybe this will be the last, Prof. Akram. Another problem that we face as Muslims today, when we read our own heritage from the Western perspective, problem that we do. Easy, and we try to understand, and we are very happy, now when Muslim is raising an issue, instead of supporting him, we belittle him because he is not looking at the way how, but he is a Muslim. Now, how we are going to create this kind of awareness that Muslims, إِنَّمَا الْمُؤْمِنُونَ إِخْوَةٌ فَأَصْلِحُوا بَيْنَ أَخَوَيْكُمْ, and Allah has mentioned, indeed, the believers are brothers. Then we have to reconcile between each other, regardless of whether I agree or disagree with any one of us, or you disagree with me, because they're very close to each other. That is another trend that we have to realize today, that is creating problem, because the West divide and rule. So you don't think that we don't blame them. They have to divide like we. So blaming them is another problem. We have to blame ourselves. Why we follow and be in the traps of other civilizations, knowing the fact that we have a very well established civilization that is based on Islam. When you go back to the early stage, and Muslim scholars contributed greatly to different fields. But when we read what we have from their perspective, then we are going to create this inferiority complex. And if you look at it, this is our problem. We are praising others, and we forget to praise what our community did, our scholars did. So that is how we have to change the mindset of students to believe that Muslims have contributed greatly, even to our contemporary civilization in the West. So if we change that perception, I believe we have achieved our aim that has been trusted to us as an amana, as being, academicians in the International Islamic University of Malaysia. And another thing, better we stop blaming others. We find very easy blaming others. How we can look at ourselves. So start with ourselves, blame ourselves. Why this is not working? That might be my problem. Others is a stranger, and we try to get rid of judgmental approach as well. So if you want to instill these competencies in our, we have to be very humble. When we look at another term, tawaddu is very important for Muslim. And some others say, okay, we know that everything is provided by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We don't have to worry about this. But how we are going to instill this in the learning community, as well as to reflect on it to become better Muslims, as we mentioned that we are the same. And looking at others are being created by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we don't abuse that responsibility that we have towards our community and humanity at large. So I think with that, Prof. I would like to thank you very much for giving me this opportunity. I try to do what I can, I'm not saying that what I said, this is the best, but based on my understanding, and this is intellectual discourse, there are more rooms that we can benefit from each other. Barakallahu feek wa assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Thank you very much. Jazakallah khair. Actually, more questions are raising, but I forwarded the question to your WhatsApp. So inshallah, later on, if you have time to answer, I can forward to Dr. Aznan and others. So at the end of the session, I would like to thank the speaker for this very impactful session. And may Allah bless you and make this work in your rewards in the day of judgment. And I would like to thank everyone here for your participation. And we end officially with Tasbih al-Kafara and Surah Al-Asr. Thank you very much again. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Shukran.